He woke and told his friend what had occurred, and begged him that the journey be deferred, at least a day, implored him not to start, but his companion, lying there apart, began to laugh and treat him to derision. "I'm not afraid," he said, "of any vision, to let it interfere with my affairs. A straw for all your dreamings and your scares. Dreams are just empty nonsense, merest japes. Why, people dream all day of owls and apes, all sorts of trash that can't be understood, things that have never happened and never could. But as I see you mean to stay behind and miss the tide for wilful sloth of mind, God knows I'm sorry for it, but good day." And so he took his leave and went his way. And yet, before they'd covered half the trip, I don't know what went wrong. There was a rip, and by some accident the ship went down, her bottom rent, all hands aboard to drown, in sight of all the vessels at her side that had put out upon the self-same tide. So, my dear Pertolot, if you discern the force of these examples, you may learn one never should be careless about dreams, for undeniably, I say it seems, that many are a sign of trouble breeding. Now take Sir Kenelm's tale. Now take Sir Kenelm's life, which I've been reading. He was Canulphus's son, the noble king of Mercia. Now, St. Kenelm dreamt a thing shortly before they murdered him one day. He saw his murder in a dream, I say. His nurse expounded it, and gave her reasons on every point, and warned him against treasons. But as the saint was only 7 years old, all that she said about it left him cold. He was so holy, how could visions hurt? By God, I willingly would give my shirt to have you read his legend as I've read it, and, Madame Pertolot, upon my credit, Macrobius wrote of dreams, and can explain us the vision of young Scipio Africanus, and he affirms that dreams can give a due warning of things that later on come true. And then there's the Old Testament, a manual, well worth your study. See, Book of Daniel. Did Daniel think a dream was vanity? Read about Joseph too, and you will see that many dreams, I do not say that all, give cognizance of what is to befall. Look at Lord Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Look at what befell his butler and his cook. Did not their visions have a certain force? But those who study history, of course, meet many dreams that set them wandering. What about Croesus, too, the Lydian king, who dreamt that he was sitting in a tree, meaning he would be hanged? It had to be. Or Andromache, great Hector's wife, the day on which he was to lose his life, she dreamt about the very night before, and realized that if Hector went to war, he would be lost. That very day in battle, she warned him. He dismissed it all as prattle, and sallied forth to fight, being self-willed, and there he met Achilles, and was killed. The tale is long and somewhat overdrawn, and anyhow it's very nearly dawn. So let me say, in very brief conclusion, my dream undoubtedly foretells confusion. It bodes me ill, I say, and furthermore, upon your laxatives I set no store, for they are venomous. I've suffered by them often enough before and I defy them. And now, let's talk of fun, and stop all this, dear madam. I hope for heaven's bliss. Of one thing God has sent me plenteous grace, for when I see the beauty of your face, that scarlet loveliness about your eyes, all thought of terror and confusion dies. For it's as certain as the creed I know, Mulier est hominis confusio. A Latin tag, dear madam, meaning this: woman is man's delight, and all his bliss. For when at night I feel your feathery side, although perforce I cannot take a ride, because alas, our perch was made too narrow, delight and solace fill me to the marrow, and I defy all visions and all dreams. And with that word he flew down from the beams, for it was day, and down his hens flew all, and with a chuck he gave the troop a call. For he had found a seat upon the floor, royal he was afraid no more. He feathered Pertelote in wanton play, and trod her 20 times ere prime of day. Grim as a lion was his manly form, as on his toes he sauntered up and down. Well, grim as a lion was his manly frown, as on his toes he sauntered up and down. He scarcely deigned to set his foot to ground, and every time a seed of corn he found, he gave a chuck, and up his wives ran all. Thus royal as a prince who strides his hall, leave we this Chanticleer engaged on feeding, and pass to the adventure that was breeding. Now when the month in which the world began, March, the first month, when God created man, was over, and the 32nd day thereafter ended, on the 3rd of May, it happened that Chanticleer in all his pride, his 7 wives attended at his side, cast his eyes upward to the blazing sun, which in the sign of Taurus then had run his 21 degrees and somewhat more, and knew by nature and no other lore that it was 9 o'clock. With blissful voice he crew triumphantly and said, "Rejoice! Behold the sun! The sun is up, my 7. Look, it has climbed 40 degrees in heaven, 40 degrees and 1 in fact by this. Dear Madame Pertelote, my earthly bliss, hark to those blissful birds, and how they sing. Look at those pretty flowers, how they spring. Solace and revel fill my heart," he laughed. But in that moment fate let fly her shaft. Ever the latter end of joy is woe. God knows that worldly joy is swift to go. A rhetorician with flair for style could chronicle this maxim in his file of notable remarks with safe conviction, that let the wise give ear, this is no fiction. My story is as true, I undertake, as that of good Sir Lancelot du Lake, who held all women in such high esteem. Let me return full circle to my theme. A coal-tipped fox of sly iniquity, that had been lurking round the grove for 3 long years, that very night burst through, and past stockade and hedge as Providence forecast, into the yard where Chanticleer the fair was wont with all his ladies to repair. Still in a bed of cabbages he lay, until about the middle of the day, watching the cock and waiting for his cue, as all these homicides so gladly do that lie about in wait to murder men. O false assassin, lurking in thy den, O new Iscariot, new Ganelon, and O Greek Sinon, whose treachery won Troy down and brought it utterly to sorrow. O Chanticleer, accursed be that tomorrow that brought thee to the yard from thy high beams. Thou hast been warned, and truly by thy dreams, and this would be a perilous day for thee. But that which God's foreknowledge can foresee must needs occur, as certain men of learning have said. Ask any scholar of discerning, he'll say the schools are filled with altercation on this vexed matter of predestination, long bandied by 100,000 men. How can I shift to the bottom then? The holy doctor St. Augustine shines in this, and there is Bishop Bardwardine's authority, Boethius's too, decreeing whether the fact of God's divine foreseeing constrains me to perform a certain act, and by constraint I mean the simple fact of mere compulsion by necessity, or whether a free choice is granted me to do a given act or not to do it, though ere it was accomplished God foreknew it, or whether the providence is not so strait and merely makes necessity contingent, or whether providence is not so stringent and merely makes necessity contingent. But I decline discussion of the matter. My tale is of a cock, and of the clatter that came following his wife's advice to walk about his yard on the precise morning after the dream of which I told. O woman's counsel is so often cold. A woman's counsel brought us first to woe, made Adam out of paradise go, where he had been so merry, so well at ease. But, for I know not whom it may displease, if I suggest that women are to blame, pass over that. I speak only in game. Read the authorities to know about what has been said of women. You'll find out. These are the cock's words, and not mine. I'm giving, I think, no harm to any woman living. Merrily, in her dust bath in the sand, lay Pertolote. Her sisters were at hand, basking in sunlight. Chanticleer sang free, more merrily than a mermaid in the sea. For Physiologist reports the thing, and says how well and merrily they sing. And so it happened, as he cast his eye toward the cabbage at a butterfly, it fell upon the fox lying low. Gone was all inclination then to crow. "Cock, cock!" he cried, giving a sudden start, as one who feels a terror in his heart, for natural instinct teaches beasts to flee the moment they perceive an enemy. Though they had never met with it before, this Chanticleer was shaken to the core, and would have fled. The fox was quick to say, however, "Sir, whither so fast away? Are you afraid of me, that am your friend? A fiend, or worse, I should be to intend you harm, or practice villainy upon you. Dear sir, I was not even spying on you. Truly, I came to do no other thing than just to lie and listen to you sing. You have a merry voice as merry a voice as God has given to any angel in the courts of heaven. To that you add a musical sense as strong as had Boethius, who was skilled in song. My lord, your father, God receive his soul, your mother too, how courtly, what control, have honored my poor house, to my great ease, and you, sir, too, I should be glad to please. For when it comes to singing, I'll say this, else may these eyes of mine be barred from bliss. There never was a singer I would rather have heard at dawn than your respected father. All that he sang came welling from his soul, and how he put his voice under control, the pains he took to keep his eyes shut tight in concentration, then the tiptoe strut, the slender neck stretched out, the delicate beak. No singer could approach him in technique, or rival him in song, still less surpassed. I have read the story in Bernal the Ass, among some other verses of a cock, whose leg in youth was broken by a knock a clergyman's son had given him, and for this he made the father lose his benefice. But certainly there's no comparison between the subtlety of such an one and the discretion of your father's art and wisdom. Oh, for charity of heart, can you not emulate your sire and sing?